everybody, welcome back to the Goliath Gauntlet, presented to you by FAB Cards and 9A3 Media. I'm Tannon. I'm joined by Mitch, Uber, Leslie. Mitch, I missed you. We missed everybody at home. It's been a while for the Goliath Gauntlet. We've had a few things kind of get in the way, which we'll get into in just a minute and explain why. But today's matchup, I cannot believe we're getting this one. I'm so excited about it. It is a matchup between two titans of flesh and blood with a lot on the line. The right to play Josh Lau in the finals.
Yeah, this kind of match is the reason that the Goliath Gauntlet exists. Take the best players, no matter where they are located in the world, and put them head-to-head in a gauntlet-style bracket. So really glad we get to see Tariq Patel take on Matt Rogers. It's North versus South, both at times kings of their respective continents, so to speak. Oh, I guess, you know, New Zealand's kind of part of Australia. And, okay.
Well, Tariq's got the double championship too. So
yeah, he has North America locked out.
Yeah, he's got all of it. Yeah,
that whole darn thing. So this is really what we kind of did this all for in the first place. We've got superstars who are both, you know, big personalities and also incredible players having a chance to play. Now, this game and the rest of the Goliath Gauntlet is going to have a little bit of a different twist on it, because this, as you might be aware, the ban restricted announcement that came out sort of made a few key changes to the metagame, and we allowed our players initially to change their decks in the top four. So that was Margin Bay, Josh Lau, it was Tariq Patel, and of course Matt Rogers. After further discussion, we sort of realized, and as Tariq kind of pointed out to us, he's like, hey guys, I'm going to have to play Fatigue Oldham for the rest of the bracket to give myself sort of the best chance of winning now. And no longer can I really have that more aggressive slant that I prefer to play with. And we saw that against Dan Rakowski, for example, Tariq really trying to, you know, put pressure on there and play aggressively. So after further consideration, all of us here at the Goliath Gauntlet and the remaining players have all agreed that players also have the option to switch their hero as well. Now, all but Tariq Patel opted to keep the hero, and there wasn't a huge change in deck list. We talked about that, I think, in the Josh Lau match. I think only Josh changed his deck going into that matchup. So Tariq has been allowed to change his hero as well. Now, he and Matt Rogers have struggled to find time to play. As you might know, Tariq is quite a jet setter, quite a busy guy, and as is Matt, running his own business there at PCG, and just a very busy guy in general. So, fortunately for us, and big shout out to the two of them, they actually played a match together at the Calling Indianapolis. It's to sort of use for this purpose at the time. I mean, Tariq, you know, played the deck that he actually brought to that event, and his deck list is actually up on the FAB TCG website. He had a really, really good tournament in general. So he and Matt just got together and played a match for our viewing pleasure with the top-down cameras and everything. So that's what we're going to be bringing to you today. That's the match that we're going to be using as the semi-final here between Tariq Patel and Matt Rogers. Now, again, yes, Tariq has changed his hero, his deck. All of our players have agreed to that. We've made sure we tried to uphold competitive integrity as much as humanly possible. So here it is. It's going to be our semi-final coming up. Let's jump in. Let's talk about Tariq Patel's deck list here, because this is the one he brought to Indianapolis. This is the one he plays in this matchup for us here. It's a Briar deck, and it's pretty close to basically what we've already seen so far, right? I think at that tournament, Tannon, there were a few different takes. We can talk Nathan Crawford briefly, who had like an anti-fatigue package, and there were a lot of fatigue Oldham lists at that event. And Tariq doesn't actually have that rights of replenishment. He's still on the Evergreen package, that sort of 2 red Evergreen anti-fatigue approach.
Yeah, and I think that's been the biggest thing for me when I look at these Briar decks is the difference has been, what is your plan into the super control decks? What is your plan into that fatigue Oldham deck that you mentioned just a few minutes ago? And this is like the older kind of tried and true method of using Evergreen as your recurring threat over and over and over again. You know, we saw the rights as well from Nathan Crawford, like you talked about at that event, and with one of the best tweets of all time afterwards as well, by the way. Just going to throw that one out there.
Yeah, you've mentioned that a couple times.
Oh, I don't know why, it just really struck a chord with me. I absolutely loved it. But other than that, it's a pretty standard, you know, Briar deck. You got a little bit of yellow, you know, you get a little enough blues to pay for everything, right? Because Briar can be pretty resource heavy in the turns where it wants to go off. Yeah. But you're just looking at all of the free red line stuff that you're used to in your Briar deck.
I will also say that the bit of flavor, the bit of spice that Tariq's added here, it's not the first time we've seen this. This is actually reminiscent of a list that Chris Iala used to pilot around Worlds and around in SoCal. There's 2 Talisman of Warfare in this list. So normally Briar decks sometimes don't run any yellows, maybe just like a Pulse of Candlehold in the past. Tariq has 3 yellow snatches and 2 Talismans of Warfare here. So we're not dealing with a deck that's trying to, you know, obey the constraints of Belittle Minimalism package here. But yellow snatch is still obviously a pretty potent threat here. It still asks for a block in many cases. And if there's any cards that can obviously buff its power, Amulet of Earth for one, Force of Nature, these can all, of course, turn into a breakpoint and threaten that extra card draw here. So Talisman of Warfare is fun because both sides of Rosetta Thorn can trigger that effect. So it basically means that if Matt Rogers has any interest in protecting his arsenal, he actually has to respect both the physical and the arcane element of that Rosetta Thorn. So keep that in mind. We'll see if that's going to be relevant here. But let's talk about Matt Rogers' list here. We sort of assume that he's playing the same list at Indianapolis because he hasn't sent us another deck list that he has been so far in the Goliath Gauntlet. And Tannon, just, having a glance over this, it's pretty standard with the exception of 9 T-bones. So I brought this up before. It doesn't really come up all that often. 9 T-bone is not normally the full package that you sort of see brought in here. Like some Dash players like mix some like combustible couriers or some other sort of attack action cards here. We know that Matt, in some matchups really wants to chew through equipment, especially against fire, if he can chain multiple of these T-bones together. Against Briar, it's unclear how effective it will be, but if Briar is playing like Grasp, Creepers, Crown of Providence, and I don't know, like a Tunic, for example, that's still pretty annoying. Putting any one of those cards in front of a T-bone is not great, especially with the degenerate stuff you can do with Creepers. So that's one thing I'm looking out for in this Matt Rogers list.
Yeah, I think that's a really big thing that you brought up, and we've seen it actually play out pretty well in the Goliath Gauntlet. T-Bone, not only can it be really annoying, but in the aggro matchup, if you force them to use some of their equipment in spots you don't want to, it can be game-changing, the fact that now they're blocking attack that doesn't have an on-hit effect, so something like Snatch or some of your bigger attacks might get through. You do see Snapdragon Scalers on the side for Tariq Patel here, so that maybe he does have, the free block. So if all 9 T-bones are in Matt Rogers' deck, that's maybe somewhere where Tariq can get a little bit of edge in this matchup, so that's something to look for as well. Other than that, do you feel like Matt Rogers is going to go full aggressive into this and just try to be a race in this matchup? Or is he going to get maybe a little more defensive, play those sync belows, play the reinforced lines, and make his deck not as good at boosting?
No, he's racing. He is absolutely racing. This is an extremely volatile matchup. Both players are just going to dish out the damage that they can. And Matt Rogers obviously has that really fun package that involves the Tome of Findle. So allows him to have these like really ridiculous turns when combined with High Octane, right? Getting plenty of action points. Obviously, the free action point is what we want to use Tome of Findle and still have a big turn. We actually saw him do this at this very event in Indianapolis against, I think it was Matthew W. on Fire. And he just straight up outraced this Fire. This is post-build at Minnows and banned still, but it was some disgusting turns that come out. And that's why cards like Maximum Velocity might actually be relevant in this matchup like this. If you land one of those, that amount of damage puts you in a position where it's very hard to assail your lead in the race. And Pulse Wave Harpoon, very key card here. If you can get enough cards boosted and if you can select a card from that Briar's hand, force them to part with it, it could be a key threat, right? We could be talking Channel Mount Heroic, Swarming Gloomveil, a lot of those rural power cards that Tariq really doesn't want to part with here. So very, very powerful addition to Dash in Dynasty, and it should play a role in this matchup too.
Oh, absolutely. I think even just like, say, just taking the one non-attack action or even the one attack action from the Briar can be enough to cripple an entire turn. We've talked about this a lot from Briar. Briar can be high variance at time because she needs to do an attack action and a non-attack action both in the same turn so often for her cards to be the best they can be, that something like Pulse Wave Harpoon can literally turn a game on its head just from taking one card from a 4-card hand and an arsenal. So yeah, look out for that one. Again, we've seen that even play out in the Goliath Gauntlet as well. Love seeing these new cards have huge impacts on the game, and I love having effects like this. This is so unique in the game of Flesh and Blood, this kind of effect. And I remember when I saw this card get spoiled, like, okay, that's actually really cool, and I want to see that start happening. I love seeing high level games get impacted by little things like that in T-Bone and stuff. Just love it in Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. This matchup is probably not going to be a long one, everybody, so strap yourselves in, hold on to your hats. This one is going to be spicy. It's going to be Tariq Patel taking on Matt Rogers, a matchup for the ages, one we're lucky to have here at the Goliath Gauntlet. Let's get this one underway.
The Goliath Gauntlet is brought to you by FAB Cards, where reality and fantasy meet. Go to kfabecards.com for all your Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and Flesh and Blood needs. FAB Cards. Be who you want to be.
And again, if you, I just want to reinstate this from what Uber said earlier. They are playing in person, so you might, at home, you're usually used to them playing across the seas against each other, over the internet, and their hands won't actually cross the middle of the screen. I have to admit, I'm going to get thrown the first time I see someone touch the other person's cards, because this will be the first time in the Goliath Gauntlet that we've had a live match actually happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to point out Tariq Patel, obviously on the right of screen here, someone who I've seen tidy up people's game state before on Tabletop Simulator. So we'll see if he does that in person. I think he probably trusts Matt Rogers to have that well and truly in hand. Love the Marvel Dash, by the way. Big fan of those. Obviously, couldn't go without the Dorinthia one myself. This is turn 0 here for Matt Rogers. So we load up the induction chamber pistol and we arsenal.
Yeah, absolutely. Love seeing the Dragon Shield sleeves from these guys, their team that they both represent. This is a team fight for these two as well. So a little bit of bragging rights more than just what's on the line for, money between these two guys, a chance at the, I guess we can call it a trophy, the gold foil Goliath Gauntlet.
That's on the line as well. Trophies come in many shapes.
Yeah, I wouldn't know if Uber, but sorry, I didn't
for second place. Brutal, man.
Nope, never. But any surprises on the equipment suites from these two for you?
Not particularly here. This is very standard here for the Dash player. They've gone away from the Goliath Gauntlet. Might have been fun to have the Goliath Gauntlet here to put extra pressure down, but Galvanic Bender is very standard here. It's just a battle-worn equipment that blocks for 1, doesn't have any other, huge impact. For Tariq, so for Tariq, like we pointed out, no creepers here, so he's not vulnerable to that T-Bone plan. Erase Face is the worst card to be pointed at Dash. This is a must block.
Yeah, why don't you explain to everybody at home, what's so bad about Erase Face? I mean, you could just kind of shrug off 6 damage sometimes, right?
Right, so for many heroes, Erase Face isn't that big a deal. This is a one-off in Tariq's deck. It says when it hits a hero, cards and tokens they own lose all class and talent types at the end of the next turn. Boosting requires Mechanologist cards to be banished, so you can't boost. Also, you can't give your pistol go again because Induction Chamber says Mechanologist pistol when it targets it. So Dash's deck requires, specifically her to be playing with Mechanologist cards or equipment, and Erase Face removes that keyword, thereby removing that core synergy that actually Dash requires to function at a fundamental level here. So we're throwing the equipment in front here because Matt says, if I give cards to stop this is a great play from Tariq, let's be clear. Yeah, I cannot keep up in this matchup.
And look, I think that's a blue T-Bones. I wonder how many of them are actually in the deck, since we see that the blues generally are going to get staying in over the yellows at some point.
Yeah, the yellows get sided in if he really wants them. I don't think, I think if he knows, it's open deck list, so if he knows scalers are coming his way, he probably doesn't worry
So it looks like none of the damage got through from the Erase Face there. And I always like to compare this to, if you've ever played a game of Flesh and Blood, you've had a card in your arsenal that's good and your opponent's attacked you with a Command and Conquer, that's kind of how the Erase Face feels in these spots. When it's relevant, it's like, I have to block this.
Yeah, it's literal Dash erasure because it's not that powerful against really other heroes. There are some where it's relevant, right? But for Dash, it's like, it's pretty messed up. And it being a one-off in Tariq's card. And remember, Tariq's turn 1, he doesn't have an arsenal, right? So it's usually not a great turn from Briar. Sometimes it's like a grasp and like, a small attack action, maybe swing, Thorn. But that was the best possible turn on a short, small hand that Tariq could have had. Here's Pulse Wave Harpoon. Now, we've only had, I think, 2 boosts here. So it's 3 2-blocks being shown from hand. And they all are blue. So
yeah, so it looks like... Yeah, it looks like we got attacked by a zipper hit here, and a Crown of Providence came out pretty early. Maybe an extra card accidentally shown by Matt really quick here. But you can see Tariq really wanted to change one of the cards in his hand with this early of a Crown of Providence block. I wonder if his hand was all blues or something like that when he first attacked, or was missing, that attack that he really needed to be able to go off on his own turn. Looks like we got an activation by the Heart here from Matt Rogers as well, doing a good job of having a big turn here.
Yeah, I mean, you don't care about banishing cards here. Obviously, this is a great way to burn out quickly if you're playing Dash, but you're here for a good time, not a long time. So that extra resource is pretty crucial here. Also, Matt got a lot of information there from Tariq's hand. That's 3 blues, and, not all of them necessarily particularly relevant. So there's something to bear in mind here as we pass back now as we get a draw up from Matt.
Yeah, you're not really worried about this turn too bad, right? But hey, a lot of things can change here. Tariq is going to be able to draw 3 new cards here. So there's 2, there's 3. I see a Scar for Scar getting added to hand, and Tariq needs to get something going here. We got the names backwards down on the bottom. That's Tariq, that's at 31 on the right, and that's Matt Rogers on the left.
Oh, don't worry. By the time people at home are seeing this, that'll be sorted. So that won't be an issue. Yeah, the Tome of Harvest is not getting taken there. So Matt sees that Tariq has an arsenal and a Tome of Harvests in his hand and opts not to take that one away here. So obviously he has other plans. He wants the Earthlaw Surge instead, which is obviously a pretty functional pump here. Scar for a Scar comes through. It's going to do its work here, as obviously Tariq has opted to take a fair bit of damage, and And you got to be. Let's be honest here. Tariq does a great job of bailing himself out of a 3 blue hand with that Tome of Harvest, right? Still was able to draw into another blue in the form of Force of Nature here, but getting a Sonata. And
this
we're
is
going
a
to
really
here.
good one too. This is a really good Sonata as well. Yeah,
it's like a 1 card Sonata, right? So it's just the snatch off that. When you are, because your attack and non-attack ratio is about equivalent in the Briar deck, you hope for 2. Only banishing the 1 attack action off Sonata is less than ideal when you pitch, 2 resources from that Force of Nature into it. But look, Matt, I mean, Tariq getting to play a snatch here with an Embodiment of Lightning already up is pretty nice, especially if it means that there's a Rosetta Thorn to follow up, or we'll see how he makes use of this last card here. But yeah, snatch hits the deck.
Yep, this one has an on-hit of draw card too, so maybe a little dangerous for Matt Rogers. Only 1 card left, 1 resource floating. Like you said, that resource probably headed to that Rosetta Thorn, but there's a lot of free cards as well in Matt Rogers' deck, so you don't want to give him too many chances to fire off with that 0. So it does look like a full block with the chess piece and a card from hand that's going to be followed by Rosetta Thorn for 2 and 2, and then we're going to pocket that last card. So pretty powerful turn here from Tariq, 33 to 31. Matt Rogers in the lead, and he's about to have his turn.
Yeah, I mean, Tariq sees 4 blue cards on that turn, not counting what he sort of flips off the Sonata Arcanics here. So could have been a lot worse for Matt Rogers, but Tariq definitely holding his own and sort of walking these life totals down, which is what these 2 heroes are going to do in the head-to-head. So,
what Tariq did that turn is actually the sign of a really good player in Flesh and Blood. And you can see it from both of these guys pretty often, is how much they maximize their quote-unquote like bad turns or their hands that aren't perfect, and the chance of them, getting out of it. I remember when Tariq first made this deck, when he first made the original Briar that was, taking the whole FAB scene by storm, when he destroyed everyone at Nationals with it. And it was almost, the mono red deck type thing. And I remember when he had Sonata in it, and I asked him about it. I was like, is this really necessary? And he's like, look, it mitigates the bad turns as much as possible. The ones where you're not going to work out the way you want to, this helps a lot. And this kind of makes me remember that because, if it wasn't for that Sonata that turn, I think Tariq's turn had been a little bit, wanting a little bit more.
Yep, and I think that's why Matt took the Earthlaw Surge instead, and I guess allowed him to have the Tome of Harvests, to be honest with you. But this is a chance. So Matt's just blocked aggressively with all of his equipment here because he really wants to try and keep his head above water life total-wise, and he knows he needs to find some real power here. So we're going to open up with a Tectoplasma Pistol. Remember that Dash doesn't really have the ability to disrupt outside of Pulse Wave Harpoon, a Briar player. So if Tariq has drawn up the nuts here, he just goes he just goes to sleep this round and just, allows Matt to operate the life counter and then wake him up when it's his turn here. So here it is. So the Snapdragon Scalers is pretty good in this situation. When you see a T-Bone thrown at you, there's always the question of like, do I expect to see another one here? And that's maybe why Tariq took a moment to think about that. But it's from my perspective, it's a bit of a no-brainer to throw this out in front now. We don't think Matt is on 9, but we'll see if we're proven wrong. T-Bone, though, it doesn't necessarily represent huge damage so far. Like this turn from Matt is pretty important, I think, in terms of keeping well ahead in the race. We have 2 cards banished here, and we actually see that yellow T-Bone. So that makes us realize, wait a minute, looks like, Matt Rogers might have been on the 9 or close to T-Bone plan here. We have a Spark of Genius, Teclo Pounder being pitched out to it here. Now, what do you get? You've actually pitched 2 to this, if I'm not mistaken. You had a Teclo Pounder in your hand, so it's possible that if Matt goes and grabs another Pounder, which he might want to do here if he wants to go up a notch, and there we go, he gets another Pounder. He valued the card draw of Spark of Genius. He wanted to cycle the Pounder out of his hand and get something that's a bit more relevant, right? It's a non-block. Obviously, having 2 in here is quite a significant number. But, being able to sort of, get that one out of his hand, get the Pounder in play, which again is going to add extra power to his sort of first attack each turn. He gets to draw a card off that Spark, pop it in his arsenal here. So this says to me, Tannon, that's not a great hand from Matt Rogers either. He did not do a lot of damage at turn. It was a pistol shot and a red T-Bone. That's not enough here.
Yeah, he is still ahead on damage here. That's one thing that's going for him, but he knows he's going to probably take a bunch of damage this turn because we've seen these guys aren't really inclined to block from hand. So he's setting up on possibly getting a big swing the next turn because the first player who has to block in this matchup is probably the player that's going to be losing the match. You really want to make your opponent to be blocking first. Now we go back over to Tariq. We got an activation of the grab, so he makes a rune chant, and that's going to be followed up by this Ravenous Rabble, and that's a Channel Mount Heroic on top. So this Rabble is attacking for not a lot, but it's got that rune chant attached to it as well.
Yeah, I want to point out that the first Channel Mount Heroic we saw from Tariq got tucked back under by Sonata Arcanix's effect. Wasn't able to keep that there, so we haven't seen that yet from Tariq this game, and this really represents the Damocles sword hanging over Matt Rogers' head now. He knows that things are about to get a little bit dicey. There's plenty to work with here for Tariq as well. We've only really seen him deploy his arsenal and pitch a yellow snatch. And after a little bit of an off turn from Matt, he has to get ready for things to get a bit spicy. Now, in fairness, in an aggro matchup like this, if you want to keep deploying your arsenal, you do have to take, an off turn almost every other at times. You cannot always have these huge turns. You definitely do need to play off 5 cards when and if possible. But it's a almost full value Ravenous Rabble here with a rune charm behind it. So he may as well have flipped a bloody Gorganian Tome off the top. And we're far from done for Tariq's turn.
It looks like a Swarming Gloomveil as well behind this.
And now you see the pitch. Oh, and now you see why we see a pitch of Snatch here. We have now 2 auras created this turn. We have the Embodiment of Earth plus that rune charm. So Swarming Gloomveil is basically doing all the things that it needs to be doing here, coming in for 4.
Yeah, there could be more behind this as well. And this is what we were kind of alluding to going in this turn. This is why it's scary to have that kind of like off turn or not as high impact turn from Matt Rogers last turn, because he didn't get to force Tariq either super low or in a spot where he needs to start blocking or thinking about blocking, even if it's just the equipment or whatever, because now Tariq just gets to throw his whole hand at him. But Matt setting up for a pretty big turn next turn. He's got everything loaded up. He's got that pounder. He might be ready to go and do a bunch of stuff there, but he's taking a little time to think about this one. Is he possibly thinking about giving a card from hand here?
It's a pretty nasty, look, Matt is looking at his next turn pretty frankly here. And if he's drawn up a hand that looks remotely similar to the last one, i.e. Blue Dense, not Tackle Pounder in hand, because that really makes the blocking decisions for you. But yeah, he might be thinking if there's an opportunity to mitigate some damage here, because at least there's a Rosetta Thorn following up, but I'm pretty sure that Tariq still has a card in hand here. So it's like maybe a Rosetta Thorn off the Tunic counter if he wants to develop that arsenal, keep putting that pressure down. That's okay. Hold on, we're rolling back here. So it looks like that got tucked back into Arsenal. The entire turn got rolled back. So we're gonna just do it again. And there shouldn't be any huge changes. It's still the Ravenous Rabble coming off the rune chant. Still going to be the CMH on top here.
Yeah, I wonder what happened here. We can't hear the players, so maybe the damage was taken incorrectly. No, it looks like everything's going the same. Maybe something interrupted
over to the table. You know what I mean? He's like, "Hang on, boys, hang on."
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. There could have been something real life that actually affected this as well. Somebody could have walked up and someone's like, "Hey, let's redo this turn." I forgot what happened. What happened? Maybe something got missed here. So it looks like we are going to have a block from hand on the Swarming Gloomveil. Only 1 damage is going to get through. Matt Rogers still keeping that life total lead, but now kind of bleeding some cards from hand. Something that you don't love to do in these kinds of matchups. You can avoid it.
Yeah, so that is a blue crankshaft being thrown out here by Matt Rogers to eat this block up. So it's a bit of more of a newer card here for Dash. Not so
looks like we got
right now.
Another block from hand here too. It's a blue T-bone as well. That's going to block out that snatch, and that's going to end the turn for Tariq. He is going to set up an arsenal and move into that next turn with a bunch of cards in his hand. That Channel Mount Heroic that you're talking about, the Sword of Damocles, that is looming large possibly next turn. So if you're Matt, you've got to know all lights are green, right?
Oh my goodness. So he's blocked with, Matt blocked with 2 blues there, and he's now deploying a blue throttle. So that should tell you basically everything you need to know about the texture of Matt Rogers' hand in that previous turn. Now, at the very least, this blue throttle represents 6 damage because of the presence of Teklo Powder. So you've upgraded your blue throttle to a red one, but it's still, you've pitched a blue throttle in order to play this. So I think that Matt Rogers is in extreme danger from here on out.
Yeah, I got to agree with you there. And, there's no Sonata Arcanix to help bail out this turn on his side like we saw from Tariq Patel earlier. And it looks like that's going to be a block with a Tome of Harvest, an attack from a pistol, some damage taken by Tariq Patel here. He's down to 21. So we're going to have an activation of the heart here. There's the mill of 2 cards. We're going to go back up to 2 resources. I think we're going to load up our stuff yet again, and then arsenal and pass on over. It looks like that's going to be the turn for Matt Rogers here. Back over to Tariq. And hold on to your butts. Let's see how big this turn's going to be. A card was taken out of hand from Tariq here. Yeah. But got to believe he can still pay for this stuff.
He probably has an Earth Blue in hand. If he has any aspirations of deploying Channel Mount Heroic here, which we kind of anticipate is likely the case. So here we go. Yep, had 2 Earth Blues in hand. So it's really next turn that should be the most frightening one here. Obviously, the turn you need to deploy Channel Mount Heroic, it's 2 cards to sort of get that on the board, right? The Channel Mount in itself, and of course the Earth Blue. If there's like a snatch from Arsenal or something, cheeky like that, that's really nice. That's kind of what Tariq's looking for. If we see a Rune Chant creator, that means obviously again a blue dense hand. These 2 players are sort of swimming in it, like it's a terrible chart topping song back in the 90s.
Were you even alive in the 90s, Uber? You must have been a very young child.
I was born in 91, but that blue song will never leave my head. Back when we thought that creating squeaky singing voices, like Angry Frog and that blue song, back when we thought that was actually cool. I don't know why we ever did that.
I say we. You were not even born yet. But the funny thing, I just forget how much older I am.
Mate, I was at a high school disco, mate. I was probably 15, whatever. And that song was the gas back then. And I look back now thinking, oh, man.
It must have taken some time to come from America all the way over to, down under for you.
I don't know. I don't know how long that takes, man. I barely knew America existed back then. Sheesh. Here it is, though. That's the red patch off the Channel Mount Heroic. That's kind of it, right? If you have only one other card to deploy, having a very relevant on hit with a buff of 3 that still represents a breakpoint and asks for 3 cards is pretty perfect. And you get to go into the exude confidence after the fact. Yeah, we're laying it on thick now.
And it looks like the lights are green and go because Matt was like, yeah, no blocks and anything here. He holds his breath, goes down to 13. Tariq is at 19 here, and it's still looming large over the next turn as well. Matt needs a big turn, and he needs it now, Uber.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Tariq, deployed the Snapdragon scalers there says everything you sort of need to know about how he feels the game or where he feels the game is trending towards. It also makes me think that he feels pretty confident about being able to go wide next turn without the use of those scalers. But using snaps on a turn where you have a Channel Mount Heroic in play is infinitely higher value than snapping for like a Rosetta or something like that, right? It represents 7 damage or however much, which is a big deal. High speed impact comes out here, of course, after that pistol shot. So Matt Rogers doing what he can now to again create some pressure of his own. If it hits, which it does, the next attack will have dominate, which can be relevant in some on-hit cases. It's really just a force on that extra little bit of damage here. So I don't necessarily expect that keyword to be particularly important here. What is important is just how many numbers Matt Rogers can point in Tariq's direction. If there's a Pulse Wave Harpoon, you probably, you can ask for some 2 blocks, of which, Briar has many. That's a decent way to try and slow down or shrink this Channel Mount Heroic turn, because this is the big one coming his way in a second.
Yeah, I mean, you can see Tariq is just straight taking everything as soon as it's presented. He's like, how much is it? Yep. How much is it? Yep. Because he's got a full hand. He's got that arsenal. He's got the Channel Mount Heroic looming. Now we're going to go ahead and use the chess piece yet again. It's going to get a couple extra resources here. It's going to be pretty hard to miss. I don't think it's possible in Matt Rogers' deck to miss here. So up to 2 resources, 2 cards in hand, 1 arsenal left over. How much more can he present? Can he? Oh, here we go.
Okay. Tome Final. Obviously, the Achilles Accelerator is in play, so he had to boost an attack before the Tome. This is nice, right? It's not from Arsenal, though, Tannon, crucially. So you don't get that extra upside of gaining life based on how many cards are in your hand, which hurts. But hey, it means that Matt Rogers can go a little bit wider, a little bit more aggressive here. So let's hope he drew some absolute gas.
He's going to need it to keep up here. I mean, Tariq is at 11. This is a scary life total, say, if some reds are behind us, but I think this is a blue throttle.
That is so not gas. All right, gets the grass at the Arc Knight. Matt Rogers dealing 2 damage there. And a 0 to 60. That looks a little less sad than a blue throttle, at least. But again, not what you're hoping for off your Tome of Final turn.
These last few turns when Matt really needed it, his deck has turned up a lot of blues and yellows, and just any reds would have been very welcome for Matt Rogers. He's going to finish this off with a pistol hit. That's going to put Tariq down to 4. Just took the full build this turn. And this is a fully powered turn from Tariq. I wonder if Matt's going to make it out of this. If he makes it out of alive, I wonder how many cards he's going to have left over.
I don't think he's
Tome to start.
The
I don't think so either.
Is very bad.
Also, big here as well. There is 3 counters on that tunic as well, so that's at least a free attack from the Rosetta Thorn that you don't have to have a card left over, resources left over. So Scar for Scar's got to get in for a ton. Matt down to 6.
Wait a minute.
Is this going to be Matt's last turn of the Goliath Gauntlet?
Yeah, that's so nasty. Scar for a Scar with obviously the go again turned on, followed by Lightning Surge. It tells Matt so little about what's left in Tariq's hand, and Matt has to realize, oh my goodness, this is going to be like a 3 or 4 attack action turn. We're going to block now. 1 leaks through.
This is going to be a Sonata behind this. Oh, this could be very, very dangerous. If this is a hit, this is going to be so devastating.
Embodiment. We've already got a hit. Yeah, we didn't pitch into this here, so it means we get a Coax of Commotion with Go Again turned on. Remember, I mean, potentially being able to draw Tariq a card here is absolutely massive. All the other effects, maybe not quite so relevant here, but yeah, there's nothing really that Matt can do instead of try and put as many cards in front as he can and do some damage control. But that is hefty indeed. Okay, Quicken Tokens for the boys is the call. That's Nick Butcher, obviously shown on that card. Out of Sydney, if I'm not mistaken. He's dead. He is absolutely dead. What a nasty turn there from Tariq Patel. The Coax Commotion off the top of the Sonata Arcanics, followed up by an Enlightened Strike. Rosetta Thorn was also there. You can draw as many cards as you like. It's not going to be enough to block Briar when she gets going like that. And it will be Tariq Patel advancing to the grand finals of the Goliath Gauntlet to take on Josh Lau.
I know you've got to be super excited about this final as well, Uber. I know you're a big Josh Lau fan. I'm a big Tariq Patel fan. I'm a big Briar fan, so I'm going to have to champion that side of the matchup. Now, we just saw a really great aggro matchup between Dash and Briar here. Not a lot of blocking, a lot of back and forth. Is that how that final is going to play out, or is Josh Lau going to maybe pivot a little bit more in that matchup?
So it is a race in theory. Dorinthia needs a little bit of help to present the kind of threat that Briar can when Briar comes in with sort of 5-card hands. Because much like Dash, Dorinthia doesn't really have the level of disruption required, but she has a lot of cards that help her with the race. Right? Iron Song Pride and Glistening Steelblade have been crucial inclusions to that list and have actually given it some potential to win out in those race matchups. But it's very volatile, much like that previous game. And you can see how Flesh and Blood is a low variance game, definitely lower than almost any other card game I've ever played. But you can see some of these turns where Matt Rogers is going blue attack, and Tariq Patel is just not even blinking. He's just, he's just taking it all and the snap keeping a 5-card hand and coming in. This can happen when you have aggro matchups, and aggro mirrors obviously take that variance and it takes it up a level here. So Dash she can try and play mid-range, but she doesn't usually have the tools to like create ridiculous turns off like a small number of cards. She can play mid-range and she can play pistol, but give your Briar opponent so much time to develop multiple Channel Man heroics over the course of a longer game. The result ends up looking really similar. You need a little bit of help from the heart of the cards, so to speak, as the Dash player there to go off, and a bunch of stuff didn't line up. Seeing a Teklo Pounder pitch to Spark of Genius to get a Teklo Pounder in order to draw the card, to cycle the bad cards out of your hand, it definitely looks like the blue half of like Matt Rogers' deck was the one that was delivering most of the gas to his hand, and that's not enough. Tariq had some off turns too. Let's be clear. Like both players, Tariq had like that 3 blue hand that Matt managed to see, but opts not to take the Tome of Harvest there. Presumably because he feels like the Earthlaw Surge is a bit more of a threatening card there. Tariq is able to draw out of a bad hand, and that's what Briar has. She has the tools to get herself out. That's actually what makes a great Briar player, right? Is the ability to salvage turns that look really bad on face. Dash doesn't have the ability to do that unless there is like a Tome of Findle option for you, and we saw that didn't even come out of Arsenal for Matt, so it didn't have the upside of the life gain. Brutal game for the Dash player here, and this is the power of Briar. This is why she's so close to LLing. She's nothing short of terrifying when she gets going.
Yeah, and I'd like to say thank you to both our competitors here in this. They have a lot of stuff going on in their real lives. Tariq is an actual real life doctor on top of a hell of a card player in games other than just FAB as well. He's been, like you said, jet setting all over the world, playing these games, and then when he's not doing that, he's busy saving lives. So it's a little hard sometimes to be like, hey, we need you to play your match. He's like, hey, I've been the last 16 hours in the hospital taking care of. Matt Rogers owns multiple businesses. He's all over the world, literally. He's in US, back home and stuff. And these guys took time out of their busy schedule at the Calling in Indianapolis after playing all the rounds. Like Tariq had, I think, just gotten eliminated from the top 8 of the Calling, and then went and found Matt Rogers like, hey, let's get our match in just in case, because they knew that both of them were going to be unbelievably busy over the next few weeks. We tried to get the match in the normal way that we could. That didn't work out, so that's why you got the in-person match here. A little bit of a treat, actually, here at the Goliath Gauntlet. The first real fist bump we've ever had at the Goliath Gauntlet, so that was pretty nice. And I would be remiss as well if I didn't mention kfabecards.com. Make sure you go there for all of your card game needs. We wouldn't be able to put on the Goliath Gauntlet without them. Great guys running that store over there in Utah. I'm a huge fan of their stuff. It's where I order all of my stuff from. I know you've done a few things with them as well. Can't wait to get my kayfabe gear as well. I've got some, I think, in the mail soon. Wink, wink. Can't wait to have that. And there's a few other people that we should thank as well. Right, Uber?
Yeah, absolutely. So big shout out to Legend Story Studios as well for partnering up with us and putting a gold foil Goliath Gauntlet, a special one, graded by PCG, of course, on the line for this tournament. Big shout out to them for coming and getting involved. Obviously, down the line, we hope to keep this running, especially in Outsiders season, and bring some more of that CC action to you. Legend Story Studios have been with us every step of the way from the beginning, so I just want to express a heartfelt thanks to them. Big shout out to Mara Faris as well, who has provided a fantastic altar of a Goliath Gauntlet as well as part of the prizing. It's great to have such incredible partners here at the Goliath Gauntlet. And it's great to have you fans at home. Thanks for supporting us so far. We do apologize, of course, for the delay between our semi-final matches. We hope to get the grand final off and running as soon as possible. It will be Joshua Lau on Dorinthia taking on Tariq Patel and Briar. That's not one to be missing. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you out there in the flesh and blood. We'll see you next time for our Goliath Gauntlet Grand Final.